The music you're about to listen to is completely procedure generated in JavaScript. Now, it's definitely not the most amazing and record-breaking song, but I've never had any experience with procedural music generation, and I wanted to create something that I could use in background of YouTube videos or possibly games, and so this is what I've been starting off with. Let me go into how I did it. Procedural music, also known as generative music, has been used in other games and projects. Pikmin 2 used it quite well, depending on the scenario that the player is in. The designers created multiple different chords and melodies that would all go in and stitch together depending on the circumstances that are very unique. A really great video is by Scruffy, who completely covers all the different situations that can happen that the music changes and evolves. Another game that was similar to it was Need for Speed Most Wanted 2005. This had about 4 hours worth of police chase music that would occur, and this would change and adapt very seamlessly depending on what the driver's situation was in. If they were escaping, it would play something else. If they were about to get busted, it would also play something else, and they would all link in really well. Those games weren't entirely procedurally generated when it came to the music. The music was first handcrafted and then be able to stitch together depending on the situation. What I would like to do is be able to generate a piece of music for any period of length that can change and adapt depending on just randomization and also by the user's input. This is just something I want in the background of a YouTube video, something that you're not focused on. I've never learned any music theory at all, so it's going to be a big learning experience to me. And I think the end product that I'm going to have is going to be might be pretty good, but I think it'll be okay. Something that you'd like, something you probably won't listen to on its own, but it will evolve and adapt, change, and be better. There are various techniques to generating music, as it's not a novel idea, and the first one that may come to mind is AI music using prompts such as kind of like your ChatGPT. In this case, I will not be using this. Not only does it cost money, there are of course ethical concerns as they are trained on people's copyrighted songs, no doubt. In this case, I wanted something that was kind of unique and something that I would learn and program myself rather than just typing in and paying someone else money to generate it. It's not really that fun. There is a more ethical AI, however, such as Music RNN, which is a neural network based one using data sets trained from MIDI files, which I essentially think of it as a JSON file containing all the information of the instruments, the notes, the chords, and so on and so forth. So for example, the Maestro dataset that I believe is publicly available contains 200 hours of virtuosic piano performance. So it doesn't have like copyrighted music. It's just purely based on that it's been trained on. And this was actually done way before the big AI boom, as you see here. 2018 was when it was published. And this still would require significant human input and your own tweaking to make it very more original than just telling it what to do. It uses TensorFlow, and so it's a bit more intensive on the system, so I wanted to move a bit away from that. I felt it was pretty cool, but something I didn't want to go down. I did eventually come across Markov Chains, which is a method of stochastic randomization. It gives you more control by having states that the state can change into or go back into itself depending on a certain chance. The most common example used is within predicting the weather. For example, when it's sunny, usually the next day it's going to be sunny. It's quite rare for it to just then turn suddenly snow. And so you can create a state where the chance of it being sunny again is a lot higher than it changing to either raining or cloudy. It only cares about its current state, so none of the previous states it was in before. So in this case, if for a chain, if it's sunny today, well, what's the chance of it being rainy tomorrow or sunny again today? This can be expanded and changed, of course, the probabilities will change depending on the season, and so are other factors that can be implemented around a Markov chain, but they're very simple and efficient. And so it has been used for music before. You can use it to generate music. Because music is very rhythm and has a pattern to it, quite ideal to procedurally generate a tune. You can use Markov chains to create a sequence of notes based on an existing sequence of notes, so essentially a new variation of it. Because of Markov chains, we'll find the probability of a next note and ignore the probabilities of notes that don't go next to each other. Therefore, it will give us a sequence that's similar but yet different. This Medium article does a really great job of going through it by providing it notes, the diagrams, and so forth. They were able to use Markov chains to generate quite a new song that was in a style of certain artists that provided it with this short sequence. It came in that kind of vibe and style, so it's quite a powerful yet simple tool to use. I'll be using Tone.js and writing some pure JavaScript with some CSS and HTML to keep it simple, and I want it on the web, so no Odin or Python or anything like this time, something that I can have posted and perhaps just generate music on the fly when I need it for a certain situation. Now that I have an algorithm and a framework to use, what kind of music should I create? Well, I said I wanted to do quite ambient music, and I've been thinking of doing something like Tangerine Dream, which is an electronic band, and they have hundreds of albums to go through, and you may have actually heard them from Grand Theft Auto 5, as they did the score for that. Their music has no lyrics and just electronic music most of the time, which makes it very ideal, I think, to try and maybe recreate that. We'll see what we can do. Firstly, I thought I'd just try and vibe code it, see what the results would be like. It wasn't going to be like a finalized thing. I just wanted to see what the AI could come up with and what kind of music would come out of it. Rather than trying to do it from scratch first, I thought, hey, I'll see what it's like, and then I'll build my own. And I simply just asked it, what methods can I use to make generative music in the style of Tangerine Dream with Tone.js? I'm looking to have it in the style of Tangerine Dream like Mona Da Vinci. And what it did come up with was pretty decent. Eventually, I went to the version later. It eventually broke. I wanted to see if it could afford it, and it was a bit too much for it. But the results were pretty good, and I thought, hey, this is something that I could at least try and recreate as well, and apply my algorithm, the Markov chain, instead. It definitely didn't sound exactly like Mona Da Vinci. Wasn't able to capture that kind of thing, but it did have that electronic kind of gradual style to it. So my first attempt, just set up a Markov chain, provide it notes, then play it back. And this is what we get. Simple page, provide it trained data, so I generate the Markov chain. This is what we got, length of 32, then play it. This is what it sounds like so far. So it's okay, not amazing, not great, but it is a generated song. Now let's see if we can enhance it and add some different features. First, let's go over what it looks like. So our Markov chain, it's very small, less than 50 lines. We have a constructor, add transition, train, next song, and then the generate function, and it will return us with the sequence. You can see I provide with some training data, i.e. a sequence of notes. We create a new Markov chain, we then train it with the training data. We can then generate the sequences. We give it a starting point like this here, C4, we tell us the length we want, and it will give us the generated sequence back. When we train our data, we're going through the sequence, the length of each sequence, and the one next to it. We're seeing how many times it occurs before we push it to that state. So for example, if we look at our training data below and check C4, we see that it's followed by E4 here, and that it's also followed by E4 here, but it's not followed by E4 here and here. So we can imagine that 2 out of the 4 times E4 occurs, therefore it has a 50% chance of occurring. We make this check for all the notes, so we're able to generate any sequence we want with any starting point, not just the C4 part. When we want to generate our frequency, we simply provide it with the start state and the length. It'll go through the length and say this next current state. It'll check what is available in the current state. It'll see if whatever occurs actually has anything else. It could just be nothing else, nothing occurs next, and therefore it'll just pick one at random. If it doesn't, it'll then pick one based on its frequency. So if there's, like I said before, with C4 and it occurring, it could have a 50% chance of picking that note. That was only 50% chance, meaning there's a chance that it'll pick something else. But there's obviously highly prefer whatever has the higher frequency, maintaining that sequence, but also adding a bit of randomization. If there's a 90% chance of a note occurring, then there's still a 10% chance of something else occurring. So as you can see, it's a very simple code, but yet effective and quite powerful. Think of it in other situations such as AI behavior. It could be quite good for that, having different states with a chance. So it could chase the player at a 90% chance, but hey, maybe there's a 10% chance the AI gives up and does something else. I felt like the next step was to add some enhancements, such as providing a tempo, a reverb and delay. Now when I train the music, I can change how it plays. As you can see, with a nice reverb, and I can turn it down like that, and I can also affect the delay. I can also increase the BPM if I really want to. Tone.js makes it really simple to do this kind of thing. So we can see that I actually set up a tone.sequence. This handles all the timing really well and makes it easy. As you see in the subdivisions, I have the eighth of a note. I can change this to be, for example, a quarter note for both the duration of these attack trigger and attacker release. So now when I run this, you'll notice that it will be a lot longer. It also makes it significantly easier to set up filters and create your own synthesizers. As done here, we can add a filter, a reverb, and even a ping pong delay nicely. We can just simply connect them all together. Eventually, once we're done, we can do a little bit of cleanup, think of it as memory cleanup. This has been great for someone who just never has used music, and the documentation is pretty good with how it's used. I wanted to make it a bit more Tangerine Dream-like and more electronic, and I added a bit extra layer such as a bass. So now when we train it and run it, we have a different sound while also bass is playing in the back. Just like our main melody, we can also provide a bass sequence and also provide a Markov chain of the bass as well. So we can add more layers of just procedure generated music. We don't have to just do the main melody, we can also do the bass as well. Just like the sequence, we can give it its own synthesizer as well, the bass synth. I set it as a sine or whatever as a tone synth. We can also just have it set duration different, and that gives us that as bass that lasts nice and long. Well, now that I have a bass sequence, we can add more layers of sequences as well to really add some depth to our song. So now when we go and play it, it will sound like this. We have a lot more going on, and now it actually kind of sounds like a piece of music. We've added plenty of more sequences, which now added our depth, such as we have the normal main melody, we have the bass, the arpeggio, a percussion, and even a counter sequence to really add their depth, all with their own different type of sequences that can be procedurally generated with our Markov chains to add variety. There's probably many things that you can do, but I'm not someone who does music theory, and so I'm probably missing out on a lot of really cool things, but things that I'll probably pick up on and learn on the way, hopefully. Now what we had was pretty cool, but it would just generate through the loop every 32 notes. So it wasn't procedure generate forever. Think about it, every 32 notes it will just restart from the beginning. But because of Markov chains, we could create a new chain for every 32 notes, and this is what this does. And we can also ramp up to each song. Now it's starting to sound like what we had at the start. If you watch the notes carefully, you should see them change as we regenerate them with the Markov chain. And there you go. We're also introducing new sequences like here as the arpeggio kicks in as well. So we could just regenerate our chain with the same training data, but it'd be nice to provide it with new ones and add a bit of depth and evolve. A lot like Tangerine Dream's music that does, it does evolve and chain. So we can provide it with many different sequences that all have a different start and different kind of rhythm to it. Either starting with, like you see, F sharp here. We can then simply just choose that one at random, provide it with an index and switch through it, retrain it, and then provide us with a new output. We can also do this, not just that, but also with the arpeggio. So as I do here, I also provide it with multiple different sequences that have nice little names, like the Mystique one. And that does the same process of changing it. And within our frequency, Tone.js does make it very easy. As we can see in our generator, when it hits the note, when the note index hits the length, we just simply regenerate it and it will actually update the sequence. Tone.js allows us to schedule when something should start. So for example, like we had the bass that just started, and then we kick in the main melody on the second measure, and then the counter sequence appears on the fourth measure, then the percussion on the 8th, and then finally the arpeggio on the 10th. So now we have a piece of music that generates and changes as it been played forever. However, it still is in itself familiar, and that we should really, next step would be to add different types of synthesizers that can change. So it maybe for 5 minutes plays this kind of song, and then the next 5 minutes it changes and does something new, and that means I'll add some really nice variation. So I thought I'd be able to try and add a different variation and see what it sounds like. I thought I'd go something more retro like Metroid with the original Brinstar theme and see what it would come out with. So if we train this day and give it a go, this is what it sounds like. It sounds, somewhat like a Metroid theme. I did also add the ability to record music because it would only be so good if I could play it but not be able to record it for my YouTube videos. In this case, it just plays it to a WebM format. But at the moment, there needs to be more improvements for it to be able to sort of provide it maybe with a time length, and then it would automatically be finished and save it to a file. The Metroid music essentially works in the same way, as in that we provide it with a sequence and we can train it. We simply just choose a different synthesizer as well, and we'll get different results, and also change the duration. I've also been looking at trying to do a duration as well of each note to add a bit more variation rather than them all playing at the same time. There are obviously some challenges with the fact that a sequence will always run at the certain subdivisions, and so I do need to just kind of look into that and further evolve it. But this is really where I am at so far with it, and I think it's pretty cool with what I've got. Someone who's never touched music theory, it's definitely not amazing with what we have, and it's maybe perhaps just a bit randomized, and it's almost like just notes are just playing at random. It's not something you'd want to listen in your own time. But there have been plenty of examples of people creating generative music that is just procedurally generated that you could listen to in the background that was very ambient, atmospheric. I think I want to push my focus more onto 8-bit music first, as it simply is just more simple and easier to perhaps recreate with a synthesizer rather than trying to create very complex and layered sounds. Why not start with something where they didn't have that power to do so and see if we can recreate it? The Claude AI has been very useful at providing me things like just, hey, generate me a sequence and durations in this style. But they've always been pretty good, but not close enough. It's sort of like, yeah, you're getting there, but never on point. It's always that kind of like good enough kind of vibe rather than that being it's good and it's what I want. But again, someone who's not touched music theory, it's a good starting and stepping stone point for me then to actually look at videos or tutorials and such where I can perhaps just recreate a synthesizer or recreate a notes and actually understand how it works, and be able to make those more advanced musics that could be procedure generated and actually sounds pretty good. Markov Chains isn't the only way to generate procedural music. In this paper, 6 techniques for algorithm music composition goes through different methods that you can use to generate music with different results. One of them being L systems, which is what's typically used to generate plants. This is a pretty good paper, and I might explore and try some of these ideas. I'm very familiar with L systems, and that does sound like quite a fun way to also add it into this project of music generation. And so with that, I'll end it there. If you want to see more content about procedural generation, then check out and subscribe to my channel. I've covered things such as generating roads and looking at auto tiling, so you can create endless roads with a nice little tile set. I do have some other discussion videos, but I'll let you find them out for yourself. So hopefully I'll see you in one of those videos.